Hi, this is Roxanne for Projects with All My Heart. This video is a tutorial making the rolled roses. Here are a couple close-up samples of the roses. You will be making 3 of these for this layout. These are the pieces that you'll need. You'll need 3 of the die-cut spiral roses, and it's from the Tattered Pinecone Sizzix die designed by Holtz. And these are great packages to keep because especially on the back of this one, it has all of the steps needed for making the pine cone. And I'll also post on the same blog post the video that Holtz has made to show how his pine cones are created. And he actually makes his roses the same way. And that's with that toothpick glued into the center. So you might want to check that out as well. So we'll need 3 of those. 2 will have the floral pattern and 1 will have the map as the face up. The other 4 pieces you'll need are actually from the Tattered Florals Movers and Shapers die. It's very similar to the Tattered Florals die. These particular ones are similar in size and they're a little bit cut, so you don't have to do the trimming off of these. And so one of the roses will not need the extra pieces, and that'll be one of the florals. So I'm just going to set these off to the side. The next thing that you'll need to do is some inking. So I'm just pulling off the floral side, and I'm going to hang on to the map side at the moment. So I'm getting out some tea dye distress ink, and I'll have my ink blending tool that I'll be grabbing. And I'm just going to add some ink to the outer edge of the rose. So just lightly. And the tea dye you will put onto both the floral as well as the map versions. I used it as the base for both roses. You can see it makes a little bit of a difference, but not much. So repeat the same thing to the floral, both floral shapes. And just for the sake of time, I'm only going to demonstrate one of the floral shapes in this video. But you will need to do this to both of the floral spiral rose shapes. Now for the map, you'll need some vintage photo distress ink. And just go along on the edge with that. And the vintage photo is only used on the map flowers. It's the same paper. One side has the map and the other side has the floral pattern. So I'm not being too fussy with the ink. Now for the floral roses, I'm going to come in with fired brick. And again, I'll only do the one rose to demonstrate. Just nice and light. It goes on quite dark. And as with all the distress inks, they go on quite dark and then they just lighten as they dry. And all the way to the center. And you'll again repeat that with the other floral pattern. Now the next part will be for the rolling of the rose. And so this comes down to personal preference. If you've watched the video or have preferred to make the pine cones with a toothpick attached, you could do that here. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we do that, we need to just curl over the edges of the petals. And so you can use a bamboo skewer. Those are quite narrow. This is an old rub-on tool from American Crafts that I've pulled out. And you can see the tip of it is a little bit larger. So it just comes down to personal preference. The bamboo skewer is very handy. And I'm just curling them under lightly. And after we roll the rose, some of these curls won't be that visible, but it does just help as we put everything together. Just gets it started. And also you could go through, similar as the pinecone, you could go through and give a little pinch to the center, but it isn't necessary. I've made roses going both ways. This paper does tend to tear a little bit easily, so you could use that technique and it would just perhaps hopefully minimize some of the tearing. Another trick that somebody in the class suggested was just taking a mister and giving a fine mist of the water over the petals. And that can help, and that's a great idea because it does minimize the tearing. So here's the quilling tool that I use to roll my roses. If you've also got a good pair of tweezers, those would work. Those tend to be quite loose by making memories ones, but I do like this little tool. Just on the end, it looks like a solid piece of metal, but there's actually just a very, very slight slit in the center of it. And you just slide your paper into that, and it holds it securely, and then you can start to twist the paper. So I'm not pinching it too tightly, I'm just kind of following the curve of the paper. I don't want it to be too tight. I held it up to the video to see the curl, and I obviously pulled it off camera. I'm still quite new to this filming and trying to understand how the camera works. It's difficult when I'm doing it myself. So I just pulled the quilling tool out. I'm just going to kind of tuck it in. And you can see it just kind of unravels. Not too bad. I like to have the petals curled a little bit more under, just gives it more of a natural flower appearance. So I'm just going back with the same tool I used before. In this case, it was the bamboo skewer. And I'm just curling the petals under slightly. And as you do this, the flower tends to get quite unraveled. But don't worry about that at this point. Just pay attention to getting those petals back curled under. It's very simple. I'll show you in a few minutes here what you can do to tighten up that spiral in the center. Okay, so I'm just taking my tweezers and I'm just going to wind it up in the center. Okay, and that tightened it quite a bit. The other thing I find handy is to keep your glue dots close by. And you're just going to take that bottom part of the rose. This would have been the center of the die itself. I'm just going to take my glue dot, place that on the end, and then fold it up. I'm just adjusting my petals a little bit. Okay, and then I just take some glossy accents. Any clear drying liquid glue would work, and I'm just going in to just make sure that that rose is secure. And I'm just basically just taking random points in the flower, any place where there's paper touching paper, and just to secure it onto one another and making sure that it stays put. And at this point, you might want to go in with some more of the vintage photo for this particular flower and just add a little bit more ink. You can fuss with these roses a bit and get all the petals laying just so, but I find that there doesn't matter too much in the end of things. So here is that same floral pattern, and you'll do this with both of them. So remember, go around and use a tool to curl the edges. And once the edges have all been curled, you can go in with your quilling tool and roll up the rose. And just keeping in mind you don't want it too tight or too loose. I had a little bit of trouble getting my tool attached here. It split my paper. Okay, so going back to the map rose, recall the die cuts from your movers and shapers, tattered florals that I pulled out earlier. You'll need 2 of them with the map side up. And I'm just going in with some some tea dye distress ink and just inking up the edges here quickly. Just like I did the original rolled rose. And so I'll do that. I would do the same process with the floral ones, starting with the tea dye, but with the map I'll go in with vintage photo. And if you were doing this to the floral, it would be the fired brick. And you can always add ink too after everything is assembled. All right, and then the same tools that you used for the rose. In this case, I used my bamboo skewer again. You're just going to go onto one side of the die cut and just curl that part of the petal under. And you go all the way around. And I'll show you here what the finish, there we go. Okay, now you're going to take the opposite side of each petal and curl it the other way. So it's going to be curled towards the inside. Later on, I'll show you what the bottom of the die cut looks like. There's the top. So you start with one side, curl it under. Oh, here I'm going to show you the bottom. So it's not curled up too severely. But both of the die cut flowers you'll do in the exact same manner. Now I'm just curling them the opposite way, the petals. Okay, so you can see the top and the bottom in comparison to one another. Okay, and then I like to use it sort of a dullish tool. And I'll put the flower right side up in my hand, and I'll just try and make it kind of a dip in the middle just to kind of roll it. So here I'm just showing you with the old American crafts tool, and now I'm showing you with the dull end of the bamboo skewer. And I can get nice little curl with that as well. And then you'll need your adhesive. Glossy Accents works great. You could also use a glue dot too for this. And I'm just putting a bit of glue in both of them. And I'm just going to pop on my rolled rose onto the base of one. And that bamboo skewer is very handy. You can just poke all the way through. And then put on your second layer. So you can see how much more full those 2 petals, those 2 die cut flowers make to this entire rose. It just makes it a lot more full. So again, going back to the floral shape, you're going to take one of them. Remember, these have all been inked too. And you'll create the exact same version of that rose using the 2 floral die cut shapes as well as the tattered pine cone. Now the third rolled rose, you will not need those floral die cuts. You'll just need the one rolled, and you'll have 2 different sizes. So I'll show you here on the layout what that will look like. So here's the full layout. I don't know if you can spot the flowers. We'll zoom in a little bit closer and you can see them. All right, so here's the floral rose close up. And this is the one that you will have the spiral rose. And then you'll also have the 2 floral die cuts made from the Tattered Florals movers and shapers underneath. So this is 3 pieces of die cuts all together. Now here where the remaining 2 large roses, they're kind of the middle ones here. We'll do a close-up in a second. And the larger one is made with both of the die cuts, and the smaller one is just the one rolled portion of the die cut. Thanks for watching.